March 14th, 1985. This is Joe Todd, an interview with Mr. Fred Wheeler. So, where were you born?
Rosston, Oklahoma. May 12th, 1923.
Who's your father?
Arlie Wheeler, the best guy there was.
And your mother?
Lula Wheeler,
What was her maiden name?
rector.
Where were your folks from?
They were up around Rosston.
They both born there?
Well, they were both born in Missouri. And I know Granddad Rector homesteaded up there in Rosston. He was to Old Fort and Supply. He's a blacksmith there. I think they rode a train to, I don't know where, and took a covered wagon to Fort Supply, and he had a blacksmith shop there. And then he homesteaded up there in the Rosston area, and that's where my uncle passed away, buried him Monday this week. He still has the old home farm where my mom grew up. My dad come from Missouri over to Alva, and then Grandpa Wheeler come out here and homesteaded northwest Laverne, and they grew up Rosston, Laverne area and met.
You say your grandfather was a blacksmith at Fort Supply?
Yes.
In the town or the fort?
The fort.
The fort.
Yes, he was there when they had what was it, raised the cavalry, or when they had troops there. He was the blacksmith for them.
Did you know him?
Granddad Rector?
Yeah.
Yes. I still have some of his tools. He lived until he was 96 years old.
What was his first name?
Milton M.A. Rector.
Did he ever talk about Fort Supply?
Oh, yes. It was quite a place there then.
Can you tell us directly anything that
I just know that when the Army was stationed there, that when their horses needed shoe repair or shoes made for the horses, why, he did that. And then he made bridles for them, and he repaired their, I don't know what kind of means of transportation, whether it was wagons or what, but he was an old wagon smith, and he was an old timer.
Now, was he in the military or was he a
No.
civilian?
He was a civilian, sir.
When did they close Fort Supply, the post?
I don't know. I'm sorry, but
And then he homesteaded around
Rosston, Oklahoma, yes.
How far is Rosston from Fort Supply?
Well, it's about 50 miles from here, northwest of here.
When he homesteaded, what kind of house did he build?
Sod house.
Sod house.
We have pictures of the sod house, and that's what they lived in until Granddad also was a carpenter, until they built the frame house that's still sitting on the farm up there now.
Did he talk about building the sod house, how he
Yes.
built it?
The neighbors went together. There's two or three of them I suppose they'd build one, then go build another. But they had a sod plow, and it would just plow this sod, I believe it was 12 inches wide and 4 inches thick, and just lay it over like that. And they'd just come along and cut that in just like bricks. And the kids would pick it up and put it on a wagon and carry it up to the sod house, and that's the way they had a dirt floor. You've heard Uncle Ralph tell about that sod house.
oh yes.
And and then when that neighbor would get through building their house, or he'd get to build, they'd go over to the other neighbors and build their house. That's the way
Well, what about the roof? What kind of roof did it have?
it had a frame roof with tar paper and then just sod on top of it. Just limbs, and they did have a frame roof. I've heard Uncle Ralph say, and Granddad, and then they just, I suppose, laid limbs close together where it would support this tar paper, and then they just put sod on top of it.
Was your father mainly a farmer?
All his life.
As a small boy, what chores you do in the farm?
Man, I've started milking cows when I was 4 years old. And I never did made a cow I couldn't milk. I'll tell you for sure. I don't care how wild or how mean. And then I run a dairy. And then there was 8 children in our family, 6 girls and 2 boys. And my brother and I was right next to each other. And we'd get up and help milk the cows in the morning and separate the milk and help feed the cows and dog. And then we walked a mile to school. And and then time I was 8 years old, well, I was working in the field with horses, and I just went from there all the way through it.
Was your grandfather a rector in the Civil War?
No, he wasn't.
Were any of your grandfathers, great-grandfathers in that war?
Man, I wish you could talk to my brother. He's got this history on both sides of the family. He was a veteran. He could tell you. I don't. How long are you going to be on this history?
It's my full-time job.
Well, I mean, you're still going to be working on it the next month or 2?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I tell you what, I'd like to make it a point. My brother's in Washington, D.C. He's back here. They've got a ranch here south of us, and he'll be back next month. He was here last weekend. You need to talk to him. He'd like to talk to you. He flies in. He's got a car down the city. There at the airport. He flies in there. Where are you located, man?
Oklahoma City.
I want him to. I want you to interview him. He was in the service too, and never did leave the States. He's in a long time, and he flew all over the United States. Because he's a history major. Thank you. But I can't answer that question on my grandparents.
Okay. Where did you start school?
Where?
Yes, sir.
Redout, Oklahoma. That was a country school near Rosston.
How many students were going there?
Oh, I'll say that maybe 30, 35. There's 8 grades.
In one room?
In one room.
How did one person teach 8 grades?
They did it with the most love, dedication that anyone could. I had the best first grade teacher. I learned to read on my teacher's lap. There was 3 of us in my first grade class. She'd pick us up and set us on her lap and learn to read. And I loved that woman. I tell you, in everybody's life, there's 3 or 4 teachers that you love like your mother. And I did her. Up until the day she died, when I saw Miss Litton, she just loved you, and she's a large woman, just like you belonged to her. I went to her for 3 years, and she was a lovely, lovely lady.
What was her name?
Carrie Litton.
Carrie Litton.
She finally married and she's 40, 50 years old, married to Spencer. Dee Spencer's brother, Vess Spencer.
Oh, I know her.
And she was a lovely person. I think, well, she had a big influence on everyone she ever taught. She was a great person.
You go through high school?
Yes, sir. I
What year?
graduated at Laverne.
And what year?
1940.
1940.
I tell you, my wife and I both graduated from high school, and we never did go to college in active home service. My mom was blind, my dad's health was poor, and I just felt my lot. Someone had to take care of them, and I was there. But my wife and I have 4 children, and we've graduated 3 of them college, and our youngest son just likes one more semester. And I said, if we can graduate 4 kids from college, why, we've did a little something in this world, I'll tell you for sure.
That's right. In the 1930s, how bad were the dust storms?
They were rough, boy. I've seen a time when you look up and look at the sun in the daytime, and you just see a spot up there. It wouldn't even hurt your eyes to look at it. Just that hazy.
What did that big dust storm on Black Sunday look like when
Yeah,
it was
that was
when it was rolling in?
I'd never seen a tornado. I was in Laverne, my friend's house, and his mother said, "Oh, there comes a tornado." We looked north of Laverne, and it just rolling like this. And ahead of it, the sky was black with birds. I don't know whether it's blackbird, turtledove, millions of them just flying ahead of that. And she said, "Let's go over to Lena you know Jean Aldridge and Laverne, Jean Lucille, was in Beasley's, and said, let's go over, they got a cellar. Well, we started running, it was a block and a half over there, we started running over there, and before we got there, they were already in the cellar, and they had a lantern, and they'd be in there this way. You couldn't see your hand in front of you for a little bit. And I began to run towards that noise, the voice, and I got in the cellar, and it lasted that real black dark for, it was as dark as midnight for, seemed to me like it was about an hour, I don't know how long it was. And then it began to turn you began to see a few lights, you could see a little ways then. But I thought it was a tornado wind. I thought it was a tornado with tumbleweeds. I didn't know what it was. I'd never seen a tornado. But it was spooky.
How'd you breathe in that dust storm?
I remember my mom, she'd wet a cloth when it was real bad, and the kids go to bed at night, they'd hold that cloth over her nose, and then you could, after a while, you take that cloth off, you can just see where the suction, you inhale the air, would just pull that dust in on those washcloths, you just see the spots of dust on there.
Did it hurt your eyes, all that dust?
I don't guess it did. I don't remember it hurting my eyes. But just,
Did people lose many livestock in those dust storms?
Well, I tell you, that very year, we lived south of Laverne, and Dad got his crop planted, and it didn't rain. It got up about like this, Bernice, and drying out, was out of hay, and we started cutting feed with a corn knife to feed our horses. We was farming with horses. Well, then we didn't know what prussic acid poison was. We do now in feed, and we began to feed it to our horses and our brood mares. They began to die. Well, my dad had a bunch of 2-year-old colts coming on, and it seemed to me like it was 7 or 8 brood mares that we lost from that prussic acid poison. Just, what it is, Bernice, and killed them.
What is it?
It's a toxic poison that forms on feed, and well, it's there, boy. Until if you can get some moisture, it'll go to grow and come out of it. But you take feed that's stressed with dry weather. I don't know what causes this poison to originate on feed, but it'll just form in the stalks. And man, I'm telling you, it'll kill cattle now, don't you? Or horses or anything.
I've heard about dust pneumonia. What is that?
We never did have it in our family. We never did have any respiratory problem in our family. We had neighbors that had it. It's just like, well, it's just the same as bronchial pneumonia, only it's, man, you just couldn't breathe now. That's all there was to it. Well, I remember people dying by it in the dust storm, but it just, if I remember right, smothered or coated those little membranes in your lung where they wouldn't.
Were they just dust in the lungs?
Yeah.
Yes. One of my best friends died with it in Beaver.
But boy, you've seen trucks going down dirty roads when they're really fogging real fast. Well, now, when the whole world was like that, you can imagine what it was like.
What caused those dust storms?
Lack of moisture, and then I tell you, this whole area in here should never ever been cultivated. It's all been left grass, and we wouldn't have had that problem. And it took away, they applied this country all up, and there was no cover crop on it, and it didn't rain, and the wind just blew, and boy, she started rolling, and that's what it was. And they couldn't get over the ground like they do now, and they didn't farm with use conservation methods on the contour and things like that, and leave your stubble on top. And it was a man-made situation. Now that's what caused this to go to blowing. It sure was. They introduced these one-way plows, and boy, if you had to wait to pull them or power to pull them, they'd plow concrete. Well, it just left it sealed on top, cover the vegetation. Well, it didn't rain, and then when the winds come up, you know what that's going to do. It's going to move.
What ended the dust storms?
Well, it began to rain, and they began to change their farming techniques. I think it was in Roosevelt's administration when he began to, when they, I believe it was when they formed this Soil Conservation Service,
Yes.
and they began to get more conscious of farming. They found out that for every foot of cover you have here, and this wind comes in like that, she'll elevate it 10 foot up in the air. Did you know that?
No.
That's the way it does. That's why they began to plant these shelter belts around these houses. So just blowing straight. Well, anytime you've got a little old tree there, why, it'll kick that wind up, so just keep blowing straight. And they began to leave stubble on the ground to keep it from blowing, and plant trees, and then they began to, when I was a kid, they didn't have farm ponds all over the country like they got now. And they always, when I was a kid, they'd have spring rains, usually in April. Gully washers. Man, it'd rain 3 or 4 inches. Well, that water just run down the canyon and away she'd go. Well, now then, there's dams just about in every pasture in the country that's got any draw there for the runoff. And that began, and it's a known fact, water draws water. Well, they began to build these ponds where it'd hold this water, and upstream from the Beaver River and put in jetties. Well, you take farm ponds here, scattered all around, and somehow that just kind of draws more water in fatty conditions. So that's what, just better farming techniques is what stopped it.
After high school, what'd you do?
I went up to Wichita. I formed, 1940. Went up to Wichita in November 1940. I worked a year up at Beechcraft when I was drafted, and then I went in service. Worked in the defense plant up there for a little over a year.
What year did you work up there?
1941. I went up in November of 41, and I worked there in 42, and then I was drafted in 43.
What'd you do with the defense plant in Wichita?
I worked in a the stationery supply room, printing shop, where we printed all our memos and order pads, and we issued all the pencils and the ink and the carbon paper and the typewriter ribbons for the whole Beechcraft plant.
And you were drafted in 42?
43.
43.
I was drafted in September of 43, and went to West Coast in November when they did boot camp out in November.
Where? What?
San Diego,
San Diego.
the Marine Corps.
Oh, you were in the Marines then.
Yeah.
How long was your basic?
Then 6 weeks. They was coming and going then. And we was in there 6 weeks.
Describe your boot camp.
It was tough. I didn't know what the Marine Corps was. When I was drafted down at the city, they said, "You're a farm boy, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." "Well, you go with this building." "You're a farm boy, aren't you?" "Yeah, you go with this building." Well, finally wound up, I was in the Marine Corps recruiting office. I didn't know anything about the Marines. And I thought, well, Marine Corps, that's a pretty good outfit. Well, I was sworn in, and I still didn't know much about the Marines until I got to West Coast. And that's a tough outfit. I kid you not, boy. Now, you either. I always thought I could take anything that anybody could dish out, and I did. But we had, did you ever see this TV show, Gomer Pyle? Remember that drill instructor?
Yeah.
He was a twin for the one I had. This DI I had stood 6'2" and looked like the meanest son of a gun that ever lived. And for 6 weeks, he taught us, you've got to take care of yourself. He says, if I'm ever on the firing line and you run out of ammunition, he says, I'm not going to give you any ammunition. I'm going to save it for me. Well, finally, after we graduated boot camp, he said, all of this I taught you is just to protect yourself. He was a good guy, but it was tough. I was scared so bad in boot camp once, I couldn't tell him my name. We was in chow formation, and he wasn't our drill instructors. It was just officer day, just up down through the line. He come to me, and we had general orders. I can't remember them now, but we had to have them memorized in the first week. And he walked up to me and he said, what's your, I think it's fourth general order. Well, I was so shook I couldn't even think, and then he began, he chewed me and he said, what's your name? And I stumbled and stuttered before I could think, well, I was just a kid, 18 years old. I was scared to death. But I soon grew up, I'll tell you for sure.
After boot camp, where'd you go?
South Pacific. I had 1 weekend. I got a record, boy. I was in the boot camp in Marine Corps from November for 2 years, and had 1 weekend pass for one overseas and one when I come home. That's all the furlough time I had. I got out of boot camp and had my first weekend pass, and we went to Camp Lejeune. North San Diego. What was that camp's name? I can't. Anyway, Monday morning they said we need 51 men to fill out a 1,000-man replacement going overseas. I wasn't worried. The Marine Corps always went with the alphabet. Start at the top. Well, that morning they started the bottom of the alphabet. And they hadn't called off a half a dozen guys' name until Wheeler, PFC Wheeler. And they called out 51 of us. Well, in 2 days we was aboard the ship headed for the South Pacific, and I'd had 1 weekend pass. They asked me when I discharged boot camp, they said, what do you want to be? And I said, I want to be a truck driver. I never drive a truck. Well, the only truck I ever saw was a tobacco one on a work detail. And then we went overseas. It took us 32 days to go. We took us to New Caledonia and brought us back to Guadal Canal, kicked us off there, and the Marines were just coming back from the Marshall Island campaign, and they needed some replacements, and some of our guys went into this 4th Amphibian Tractor Battalion, and that's where I joined the outfit I was with overseas and on Guadalcanal, and I was with them in the wars over there.
Guadalcanal, was that after the Battle of
After
Guadalcanal?
the island had been secured, we landed there. They were still sunken ships. There were still snipers on the island, but we had, did lots of guard duty. Now and then there'd be guys in camps killed around there, but not very often, because they had it pretty well cleaned out of there.
Yeah. And what was the
This was in, I went overseas in 1st January of 1944, and it took us 32, this was in 1st of February of 44, when I joined this 4th Amphibian Tractor Battalion. They were amphibian tanks. They would either run on land or at sea. You'd let the ramp down, and we carried troops and ammunition and supplies, stuff like that.
On the trip over to New Caledonia, anything happen?
Oh, that was the awfulest ride. Boy, they had them stacked like this. They started out, we left on a Sunday, giving us 3 meals a day. Well, on a Tuesday morning, we'd have breakfast in the galley, and they'd bring sandwiches up on deck, and everyone would get a sandwich at noon. Well, we left in November. It was cool here. Well, we got out there in the Pacific. They'd bring those sandwiches up at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and be a guard there watching them for the dinner noon line. Well, they'd spoiled. And by Tuesday, 2/3 of the 3,000 replacements had dysentery so bad they couldn't. Oh, it was awful. Sick. I was seasick. I wanted to die and afraid I was going to. Man, I was so sick I couldn't see. Well, they stopped the noon meals, and we just got 2 meals a day for the next 30 days until we got to New Caledonia. And we sat there in the harbor of New Caledonia for a couple of days, and then they shipped us up to Guadalcanal. And I forget what battalion is coming out of the Marshall Islands, and they kicked, I don't know how many guys off of this ship. We just went over the side in the cargo net. Some Higgins boats picked us up and took us ashore, and that's when I joined this replacement, this 4th Amphibian Tractor Battalion.
Where'd you go from there?
Well, we immediately, it's in February, and they was getting ready for the Guam and Saipan operation. We got new amphibian tractors in. We had maneuvered, learned how to operate those tractors. I did. The rest of the guys had been through one campaign. And we went aboard the ship in a big convoy and headed for, we were reserve off of Saipan. The plans were land on a Saipan on a Sunday, and the next day we were going to land on Guam. Well, it didn't go quite the way it wanted to on Saipan. We sat there for 3 or 4 days. And then they sent us back to Marshall Island. That's some more supplies. And we come back, and then I'll never forget it, Easter Sunday, April 1st, we landed on Guam, and boy, that's when she broke loose.
What happened?
We had 38 men in our platoon, 17 of them was killed. I'll never forget when we were going ashore. We had 50 infantrymen in our, there's 12 of these tractors just like this, and 50 infantrymen in each one of them. Each flank tractor had a crew of 3 plus a radio operator and either platoon sergeant or platoon leader. Well, when I was going in, I was on a 30 caliber machine gun, and I could see this fire coming out. There was a platoon of armored tanks just ahead of us. They just was tanks, so we had the infantry with us right behind the first wave. And I could see this fire coming out of this mountain, and boy, they just hitting these tanks and just blowing them up. And I had a guy that I've always felt bad and never did like him, named of Shroud. He was a smart aleck. And when I looked over, it cut him too. Just, he was getting me. He was motionful. Well, we hadn't got ashore yet, and there was the Marines crying, and they was floating out there. We just had to go on ashore. Well, but then we was ashore, and I was pouring the ammunition into this, where I could see this fire coming out of this mountain up there, just shooting them down, boy, just looking around. Man, it wasn't 50 yards from me, and it was just mowing them down. Well, we finally got in and got our troops unloaded, turned around and headed back out to sea to get some more troops, and we was out there about 100 yards, and we got hit just below the water level. If the bullet had been up here, it would have killed us all, but it blew the engine of this tank up, and we was floating in the water. Well, it always told us, when you leave, we had, instead of life jackets, life belts with a little oxygen bottle in like that, and you just squeeze them and it inflate. Well, they said, when you leave your tractor, take your rifle and your life belt with you. Well, I was the last one over, and when I come up, there's 4 guys reaching for me. Well, we all had our weapons, and that life belt held all 5 of us up until Higgins' boat finally come by, and they was still shooting them. Well, all this time, other tractor, amphibian tractors with Marines was going ashore all the time, because they just had one wave right after another, just keep shoving them in. Well, they couldn't shoot them all down. They shooting a lot of them, but, and then when I got back in with the next load, we went back out there and we got on another tractor. There was dead Marines. Finally, the Marines got ashore where this gun emplacement was. Oh, I don't know, they just piled like railroad ties. They just kept crawling up there throwing hand grenades until they just, well, the Japs just couldn't shoot them fast enough, and they got up there and threw a grenade inside, and that's what stopped that right there. And then I began to wonder, and this was, I don't know how many troops would, how many landings we'd made that day. This was on Sunday, Easter Sunday, April 1st, Bernice. And about 5 o'clock, I began to wonder about some of my closest friends. I had a friend of mine, Kansas City, June Tuggle. The night before we landed, I missed him. I said, I finally found him. I said, what's the matter, Tuggle? He said, well, Fritz, I'm afraid I'm going to get killed in the morning. I said, if I felt that way, I wouldn't go ashore. Now, you can call me chicken, coward, what you want to, but if I thought I was going to get killed, I wouldn't go ashore. But I didn't think it was. Boy, his tractor bellied up on a rock right in front of that gun. It killed all 3 of their crewmen and all 50 of these guys. 53 of them shot down right there. Well, we got a little breather about 4 in the evening, and then the infantry had already shoved in 100 yards or so, and I began to wonder about Tuggle. Well, I went down there, and he didn't have a scratch on him. Concussion what killed him. He just looked like a bowl of jelly, boy. And killed. And Craddock, their tractor driver, I'll never forget, this shell had hit him, Bernice, and his shoulders had fell together, and it just blew his head off, his shoulders just together like that. It was quite a sight out there. I haven't told too many people about it. I've got it in my diary. I told my wife. But I wanted Tuggle's watch. Well, everything was stripped from it. And how much time you got?
All the time, as much time as you got.
Okay, I want to tell you. We were in B Company. Tuggle had a friend in A Company from Kansas City. Well, we lost 17 men out of our platoon. And by evening, they began to pick up the kind of the dead ones, or they had they called them engineers. It wasn't our outfits coming along picking up these bodies and their dog tags. And those guys would go through their fatted money, they'd stick in their pocket, take their watches. They was a ruthless bunch. Now, all of them weren't like that, but a lot of them were. Anyway, after Tuggle was killed, his mother wrote John Monroe, a fellow in A Company. That's where he's hosting the reunion in Kansas City this year. And John knew I was a good friend of Tuggle, and he said, Fritz, why don't you write June's mother and tell her about it? So I wrote her a letter. I went and told my lieutenant, well, he said, just don't tell her where you are, but he says, tell her what happened. I said, I'm going to be with you like I'd want any boy to have been by my mom. I said, June didn't know what happened, and he didn't suffer that long. He just killed him instantly. And I even went up and took a picture of his headstone with this memorial deal, and after they'd secured the island, sent her a picture. Well, I got a nice letter back. She said, if you ever come to Kansas City, come see me. She was a cashier at the cafeteria at the airport there in Kansas City. Well, after the war, this outfit I was with has a reunion every year. I've gone to several of them. They had one in Kansas City. They always meet on a Friday, and then they have a big banquet dinner on a Saturday. And anyway, old June had, John Monroe had invited June's mom. This was when I was 45. I'd gone to some other reunions, but Miss Tuggle came. Well, she last remembered her boy, June, as an 18, 19-year-old kid. Well, when she come to that reunion, bless her heart, she began to cry, because we was all middle-aged men. This has been a long time, 20 years after, so. She began to cry, and I began to talk to her. And she finally composed herself. She stayed for the banquet, and I had the greatest talk with her that ever was. And I've been to Kansas City 2 or 3 times since. I called her when I was up there, it was raining, and she said, hello, so lonely. I said, Miss Tucker, yes. I said, this is Fritz Wheeler, June's friend down in Panama. Oh, you're June's friend. She liked to talk the leg off me, boy. But anyway, I put her mind at ease, and it was a sad deal. Then we stayed on Guam till the island was secure. We had hauled troops up to the front line, because those amphibian tractors would crawl a wall, and just like caterpillar tracks on them. Then they'd go back out to sea, and they'd pull them around, and they had cleats, grouser cleats like that, and they'd throw a rope out there, and they had a ramp down those LSTs where you could back up there, and you could back up on them, load out in the water. And we'd load those things with ammunition or bread or canned food or what, go back shore and take supplies in. And then when we, if we was taking supplies up on the front line, we'd bring casualties back to the first aid station till the island was secure, and we stayed there until 4th of July. We went back to Guadal Canal, and our tractors were shot all to pieces. Well, we was getting ready for this Iwo Jima campaign, and I thought the good Lord's with me on that, because our tractor didn't come in, and I missed that one. Well, then finally we got our new tractors in, and we began to train for these new tractors, and then we headed for Guadal Canal. When did we make that landing? Okinawa, excuse me. And then I made the landing on Okinawa. And the beach we went ashore on there, it was a bigger island. Guam wasn't very big. And boy, I'm telling you, the Navy had been shelling these islands, I don't know how long, and they had Okinawa annihilated. Boy, it was, all the installation was blown up, where we didn't meet much opposition. They still had lots of Japanese soldiers there, but they was in pillboxes where we just had to fight them after you got ashore. And then,
did you ever go in the caves on Okinawa?
I was afraid to. Some of the guys did souvenir hunting, and I said, God helps those who help themselves. And I've got no business in those places, I'll tell you for sure. I went into tombs. I slept in the tombs. Yes, those, they'd be just like a little rock garden or a little rock house. And they had their, I don't know what you call those pots. All their people's cremated, and their ashes was just be a little room, say 10 by 10, 12 by 12, and a little ledge around here, and just vase after vase of families had been cremated in there. I know they had told us before we landed there that there's a real poisonous snake on Okinawa that they didn't have a venom for, that watch out for it. And my first night I had machine gun watching. I think it was 12 to 2, a 2-hour watch. Well, I had a good friend named Pee Wee Fuller. His superintendent, he never got. He said, Wheeler, we went to bed, and he felt something slither across his chest. Say he come out of there like a shot out of a gun, because those tombs was laid up with rock and be holes in them where snakes would crawl in and out of there. And It scared the snot out of him. He said, I'll go on gun watch. He said, I'd rather be awake than laying there. So we went on gun watch, and scared, you can see it. The Navy was shooting these, I don't know what kind of shell, but it had a parachute on them that would just light up the whole...
Flare? Type?
Flare, that's what it was. Light up the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you can see whether anyone was... You didn't move when that came out, boy. You'd get shot. But that's the longest 2 hours I ever spent in my life. And then on my 21st birthday on May the 12th, I saw the battle wagon New Mexico take 3 suicide planes. These lame, I don't know, kamikaze planes, whatever it was, they'd fly in slow under radar. Radar couldn't pick them up. They'd just come in a treetop height. And zap, they'd just fly right into a ship, boy. They saw them coming, and they began to shoot at them, but 3 of them, I don't know, they said there's about 50, 60 sailors killed on that. I know I was on gun watch. And on my 21st birthday, and I thought, what have I ever done to deserve this? Will I ever see my folks again? I'm just a farm boy, never been away from home. Only to Wichita, when I shipped to the West Coast and then on to the South Pacific. And I grew up, I'll tell you for sure. But all that time, I never did feel like I was going to get hurt. I just felt like God was watching over me. And then you probably heard of this hill, Sugarloaf Hill on Okinawa. It was a big hill, probably as big as this building, about twice as high, right out in the rice paddy flats. There's flat ground all around it. Now, that Guam Marine Corps, they didn't figure man's life worth a hill of being. They thought, if you get killed, we'll just shove another one up there. We'll just keep shoving it up like that. On the 9th night, there was 3 tractors of us. Took 50 enlisted men and a lieutenant colonel up to replace these boys that had been. And we got up there. We couldn't get always within 150 yards of them. The dead Marines, you could see them laying. They couldn't get to them. Just laying out there just like railroad ties. You see those Marines pitching those hand grenades over, and here they'd come back. It's like that. Well, they just get numbers fewer and fewer. And those guys we took up there, they knew that they wasn't going to wake up the next morning. I wouldn't have gone. I don't give a damn gum. You can call me yellow, but it's silly just to wade into a hopeless situation. Now, I said, let's regroup, fella, and talk this over. Finally, on the 11th night, and the next morning there was 3 out of 50 alive. On the 11th night, they brought in a rocket truck, or I don't know, 3 or 4 rocket trucks. They just blew this mountain down. Why didn't they do that the second night? Instead of waiting 11 nights. They had to get around. Dadgum, I don't know how many Marines they killed. So I decided right then that I was wanting to get into some other part of the Marine Corps. And all this time, they'd been, wanted me to work in the office, push the typewriter. I could type pretty good. And after we come out of that Okinawa campaign, I thought, boy, the first chance I get, I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to go to the office. So we come back to Guadal Canal and regrouped, and I went in headquarters battalion, and I got in the office. Well, we was getting all ready to go to Japan again when, well, we was on Guadal Canal, had our new tractors, and they moved us back to Guam, the island that we'd helped secure. And we was going to go from Guam to Japan. When they got the word one night, I'd gone to bed. The Japs had surrendered, and the lights all come on, and it's quite a celebration, I'll tell you for sure, and that was it.
What did you do? What did you do in the celebration?
Well, I tell you, I shouldn't tell you this, but I never did drink. But I had a friend from Kentucky that had a friend over on Guam. He was a ferry pilot flying from Australia to those islands, and he was bootlegging in whiskey. Old Thomas and I sell that stuff. We could buy it for $25 a fifth, and we could sell it for $50 a fifth. I said, that stuff made to sell wasn't made to drink, so we was just buying that and selling it, I'll tell you for sure. And we was getting, I had buying a bond a month out of my salary, and I just drew $15 a month out of my paycheck. And so then when they surrendered, why, I went to old Cotton. I said, Cotton, I never was drunk in my life, but I feel like this deemed a celebration. Well, he was sick. It's the only time I ever got drunk, Bernice, but it cured me. Went over there, and I said, where's one of those bottles of whiskey? And it was a big old bottle. I like that, a quart bottle. And I said, I opened it up. I had an olive jar. We could buy olives out of the pick, these canned olives. And I just poured half of that up in that olive jar and opened the coat, and I just tipped her up and drank it. I lost my voice. I was sickest. I said, if that's what drinking's all about, count me out, boy. And boy. But then they had the blameless party there was, and they just hooped and hollered. And it's a good thing it didn't have to even do anything next day, because that was a mess. That's the only time I ever got drunk. Boy, I did then. But I said, don't want no more of that. And so I just washed my hands of that stuff. Oh, I was so ashamed of myself the next morning. I wasn't fit to, I was sick. I'd herped all over myself. If my mother had seen me, I'd have died. I would have died a mortal death. I'm glad no one, my friend.
Have you told Jeanne this?
Yeah, I think I did. But I said, if that's what drinking's all about. But I didn't know how long we'd be over there, but I never did feel like it, anything's going to happen. Then when I come back to the States, got my discharge, got up in Oregon. I was in a blasted car wreck. See, I got my head sewed up. I got a 3-inch screw in this ankle here. Always had the feeling something was going to happen before I got home. And I come home on crutches after all.
While you were in Okinawa, did you see those big lizards?
Oh,
The
yeah.
crawls and-
Oh, yeah. Right up a coconut tree. Boy,
Yes.
they sure did.
And they get in your house?
I saw one of the things that touched me the most. At this town, it was of Naha, and it had leveled. It just looked like a big trash dump level, but it was a dock area. Ships come in there. It was long air, and I looked down. Here was this little old Okinawan baby, about like it, just floating in the water like a hunk of cordwood. And it touched my heart. I don't care. It had a heart and soul. It bled and died just like you or I. Yeah. And it really did touch me, I'll tell you for sure. I was guarding some prisoners on Guam one time, Japanese prisoners. And they was picking up, had these little, we call them cherry pickers. It's just a little old tractor with a little winch, and it's picking up rock, putting in trucks, and it's hauling those rocks to a rock crusher, and that's what they're making those roads with. Well, they had these Japanese prisoners on detail, was guarding them. Is up there, and they'd pick up those rocks. Oh, half as big as a car, bigger than that thing here. Well, those things weigh a ton or heavy. Well, they had metal gravel boxes. Well, they'd pick them up, it'd go swaying like that. Well, they couldn't lift them up over the box, so they quit swaying. I saw one of those guys was guarding there. He's in between the dump truck bed and this rock when it swayed. Well, he put his hands against it. Why, he's just like a gnat on it. He never did holler. Man, he'd match his head up against that gravel bed. Well, his head wasn't. You couldn't even tell it was a head. It would just look like, it was just a body with something mashed on top. Drug him aside over there until that night. The truck picked him up. I don't know what they were to do with him. But it kind of, I've seen him. We've hauled troops ashore there on Okinawa, moving up the front lines. I'll tell you that the infantry was the toughest part of the service there was. I don't give a damn guy me going about the infantry, the old walking soldier. He was the best, the toughest of all the branches of service. I don't give a damn gun, boy. If it hadn't been for the infantry, we might be fighting the Japs out there in the mountains right today, I'll tell you for sure. They was tough boys, and it seemed to go up to those caves and turn those flamethrowers in those caves. I seen those Japanese soldiers come running out, just a walking furnace, boy, and they just fall over. They wouldn't run 10 yards, something like that. And then one time on Okinawa, we was there 3 or 4 months. It started raining. Oh, it rained like a son of a gun for 40 days and 40 nights. Well, those amphibian tractors, they just crawled in mud. You couldn't get them stuck. And they couldn't get these dead Marines back to get them taken care of. I had to go up one time on our tractor, and we had 50 dead Marines in the back of our tractor. They had tarps wrapped around them, ponchos around them, just like railroad ties. Just picked them up. Did you ever smell a dead man? That's awfulest. You can taste it, Bernice. I didn't smoke until then. When I come back that night, I brushed my teeth. My tongue was raw. I tried to scrape it with a knife. You couldn't spit that taste out of your mouth. It was awfulest taste. Well, I didn't drink. I didn't even, some of those guys drinking whiskey. I didn't even think about that. But I started smoking, and that smoke would take the taste out of your mouth. And that's what required the dumb habit of smoking. And still got it. But that was the awfulest smell I ever smelled in my life. I could, and I see that some of those guys been dead for a week. And they were right, boy. Their bodies, it was awful, I'll tell you for sure.
John was at Naha for 2.5 years.
Well, he was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, they had little barley patches over me. Some of them wouldn't be half as big as this room. They'd cut that barley with a little old stick deal, cradle. And then they'd have the family come around and pick up the loose heads. And then the kids would pick up the loose berries. They didn't waste nothing, boy. I'm not kidding nobody. I tell you, it was the greatest experience I ever had in my life. You couldn't give me the world to go through it again, but I wouldn't I made some friends over there, and I think as much of it I do my family. I really did. Good guys that give their life for you. I've got a friend, Murchison, Texas. Was discharged. He said, Wheeler, if you don't write me, he said, I'll haunt you and you die. I said, all right, I will, but I want an answer. Well, I corresponded with his wife. We sent each other Christmas cards. Their kids is growing. I never did hear from old Hatton, but I didn't expect to, I'll tell you for sure. Then another good friend of mine, Beach Creek, Pennsylvania. A guy named Bucky Mapes. We was discharged. We was just kids, 22 and 23. Good-looking, blonde, wavy-haired kid. I saw him. I was sitting here a few years back, and I walked in there. His old head was bare as I'd come. Bald head is his name. I just slapped his old head and just laughed. He says, well, damn you, Wheeler, how do you stay so young? I said, man, I work hard. But that was the funniest thing I ever did see. But we had, I saw this happen. We made carried some troops one time that shelled a coconut tree and fell down in their tractor and pinned, and it was like an REA pole, just a big tree in their tractor, and pinned 3 guys down, and Hatton was a big boy. He just grabbed that thing and just lifted that up and just shoved that out of the tractor. Well, we had to take it, buggered those 3 guys up. It broke them up where they couldn't even be on land. Go back to the hospital ship and never to get the fire shot and never to get unloaded, and that tree fell on them. But it had a lot of fun, and I was scared. I've been so scared. We was hauling ammunition ashore one time, unloading the ship, and they had these loudspeakers, flash red, control black. Well, it means airborne troops coming in. Here come in one of those suicide planes, and they had black people, engineers, unloading our tractor. We'd go out and haul this ammunition in. Rounds of this big old 105 Hauser ammunition, live, boy, and just so they could haul up the front line. And here come this plane strafing over there, and I don't know how I missed this ammunition dump. And there's a black boy went by me, and he ran out of his shoes, flat run out of his shoes, and I had that tractor going wide open. Man, I was wanting to fire because I knew if we hit that dump, it'd blow us to the moon. Now, that's all there was to it. Scared. I was so that gum scared I just couldn't hardly breathe. But you did what you had to do, and just thank God for another day, and hope you'd be alive next morning. I'll tell you, I've always, my folks is Christian people, and I've been raised home, and I'm a firm believer in prayer. God answers prayers. I know He did then, He does now, on your behalf and mine too, and I think that's what God just had His hand. I'm not saying He didn't have His hand over those boys that was killed. I can't answer for their life. May their soul rest in peace, but I think He just looked out after me while I was over there. I really did.
So many times you could have been killed and didn't.
Oh, crying out loud. I reckon. I've had.
When the battleship New Jersey took the 3 kamikazes, where were you?
New Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah, Battle Wagon, New Mexico.
Where were you?
I was in Okinawa there. I was just on a point of an island just about 2 miles, a mile and a half from Naha Base, where it was the town of Naha. Just this island kind of come, just pointing around like here, and here was this big harbor, and this harbor's full of ships, and I was right out on machine gun watch when these 3 planes came in. Zow, all 3 of them just flew right into that.
Did it sink the ship?
No, shoot those things, boy. These little old planes that's flying just about like a Piper Cub. Just a little old one-wing job. They just had that gum bomb strapped in there or some kind of deal, and no, it didn't sink it. It killed a bunch of sailors there on the deck, but it didn't. I don't know how much damage it did, but those things, say, boy, they can take a lot now. Don't you think they can? Those battle wagons. And then I've been in some storms at sea in convoy. I never was seasick but the first 3 days. And some guys when those LSTs was a flat bottom ship, and they'd raise up like that and come down, and you could see the deck just buckled just like that. I just think, oh, I hope old, what was this welder on the West Coast, was a big welder. I hope he had good welders weld this thing together. Then it'd take you down in a hole, and you can see a wall of water clear around you on all four sides. It'd raise you up on a swell, you can see clear over the whole convoy like that. That's, oh, I don't know, 300 or 400 ships. We was completely surrounded with battle wagons and cruisers and destroyers and taking this convoy.
When did you get back to the States?
In November of 1945.
Did you get to Japan? Did you go to Japan?
No, we had our tractors all loaded, ready for an invasion to go into Japan, and Japan surrendered. Well, they got our company commanders together, and they said, we're going to draw straws to see who gets to go in and help destroy all what they ever wanted to destroy in Japan. And A company got to go, and B company, we had A, B, and C company. And so we just sat there for another couple of months or so until they went in and just tore out all the gun installations in Japan, and then they finally come back to Guam, and then they began to send guys home on points. And well, I hadn't been over there for 2 years, and I wasn't married, and so finally they began to get caught up on their point system, and then they decided to send our whole company back, and we went aboard. It was a New Liberty ship, and I don't know what had happened to the skipper that was on there. He was sick, but they had picked it up with another skipper. He was a commander off of a cruiser, been in the hospital. At that time, the record run from Guam to San Diego was 11 days. He said, we're going to make her 9. Saying we pulled out of that harbor, he just shoved the throttle forward, and we headed for San Diego. Well, we got off out there about the international date line. We hit a storm at sea. He didn't slow that gun thing down. He just kept her wound up. Say, he just buckled like a bronc. Well, we burned up 2 of the boilers, that blame ship. So we just flopped around in the water out there for 2 days until those sailors could overhaul that thing. And then they headed north. One time they said, you're now due west of the Canadian border. Well, they're supposed to brought us by Pearl Harbor, but that storm, so then they brought us back down the coast. We come back down to San Diego. That's where we landed.
How long did it take you?
14 days.
Didn't break the record.
No, we didn't. But if we hadn't hit that storm, I think we would have, boy.
Mm-hmm. What did you think when they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, Nagasaki?
I was glad, because I knew that was where we was headed. And I didn't really realize the potential of it. But when it's your life or theirs, you can hope you can survive, I'll tell you for sure.
Did you have any feelings about invading Japan?
Oh, I was scared, but I knew we was going in there one of these days, and just like when we made those other 2 camps, damn right I was scared. But I knew that I just felt like God would take care of me, and we was going in. Mm-hmm. I knew that, of course, I know we'd already had to report how it was on Iwo Jima and some of those other, and Tarawa and some of those islands, how many had been killed there. And I knew they was going to kill a bunch of them more, but I knew that they had to be whipped. So I just felt when we got ready to go, we'll go.
And you came back to Rosston from San Diego?
Well, Laverne, yes.
Laverne.
Mm-hmm. That's where we've been ever since.
Where were you when were you up there when the tornado hit Woodward?
Yes.
Did you come down to help out?
No, my wife and I was going together at the time, and I heard about it over the radio, and they said if you haven't got family down here and you'd be in the way, and it's 2 or 3 days before I got out here.
Mm-hmm. How many were killed in that tornado?
I don't remember. I know the only person that I finally become acquainted with that survived the tornado, he later became our football coach, Laverne, Bill Heaton. He had his back broke during the Woodward tornado as a kid. He was in high school. I'm sorry, sir, I can't answer that. Seemed to me like it was, Bernice, was 125 or was it more than that?
There was 90-some killed, but there was some more died from the effects of
It
it.
in my mind 125 or
Yeah.
something like that. But I'll tell you, it looked like some of those islands over here where they've been shelling now. Don't you think it didn't?
When did you get married?
July the 27th, 1947, married the loveliest gal in Oklahoma. I didn't know her before I went overseas. My wife's a good letter writer. Bernice, I've told her so many times, I don't know why I couldn't have known her while I was overseas, where I could have been corresponding with her, because she writes a good letter. And
What's her name?
Jeanne, Jeanne.
What was her name before she was married?
Woods. She grew up at Arnett, graduated from high school at Arnett.
How many kids you have?
4, we got 2 girls and 2 boys. Our oldest daughter is a graduate. Well, she's a graduate, also a licensed LPN. She can teach nursing. Her and her husband live in Oklahoma City, and our next girl is, her and her husband teach over at Tonkawa. And then our first son lives a mile north of us. He's graduated at OSU, and he's worked for farmland industry and farms, and he and his wife live in Laverne. And my youngest son here, he's got 1 more year over at Stillwater before he graduates.
Do you have any reflections on World War II?
Think about it every day. Friends I had over there, what I endured. And don't let anybody ever tell you that you didn't get scared over there. I've been so scared. I had a good friend from Meridian, Mississippi. We was on machine gun watch one night. And those machine guns sat like this in a U. You had a machine gun tripod with 30 caliber machine gun. Well, you had a man firing it here, and one right here feeding ammunition, this other was taking care of the belt. Well, we was pinned down. They was shooting right over our heads.
Where were you?
This is on Guam. He said those tanks, we was amphibian tanks, had 12 bogey wheels they're all about the big round, that those tracks rolled around like that. And he said, Wheeler, your eyes big as those bogey wheels. Well, they called me bogey from then on over. See, I was a scared son of a gun. Now, I don't give a that gum. I was scared as the dickens. But they called me bogey the rest of the time I was overseas. But I don't care.
Now, is the machine gun, is that on the amphibious tractor?
We had them there. They had a 30 caliber on one side and a 50 caliber machine gun on the other. We always had I was issued an M1 rifle in boot camp. And I shot the sharpshooter on the firing line. After we went over and got in tanks, they said, do you want one of these 45 service revolvers? I could shoot you like that, but if you was after 20 yards, you had those things just kicked like a mule. I couldn't hit nothing with it. Well, I could part your hair 1,000 yards with that rifle, boy. Now, I'm telling you, I could hit. I said, I don't want that dadgum rifle. I mean, that 45. He said, well, you carry it on the hip. I said, by golly, I know what this rifle will do. So I carried my old M1 all the time I was overseas. And then the tractors, we had 2 machine guns on them. We could jerk them off when we had to set up machine gun watch. Well, they just had a pivot deal here, just a deal where they slid down in, screwed up, and whirl around like this. But we had to stand. We could set them up on the ground here and then take them back to the tractors. But it was a lot of fun. I'm glad I was in it. I'll tell you what, this country would be better off today, and I've said this all my married life. I believe in compulsory military training. I think every boy that graduates from high school ought to have 2 years military. I don't give a that gum if he's got a broken leg, broken arm, or something, but there's something he could do for 2 years. Yeah. And I think if we'd have had that, we wouldn't have had this dope problem we got going around over the country right now. Because now, boy, they made a man out of you. And you learn to respect. Someone has to be in charge. You have a supervisor.
That's right.
And someone has to be in. We got people now that they want to be in charge. Well, now that isn't the way the world works. You've got to have someone in charge of what you're doing, and they learn to obey and respect orders.
I grew up in the Army.
Well, did you in service?
Yep.
Well, what do you think? I'm asking you personally. Don't you think
I
this
agree
country would
with
be
you.
better off with
Yeah.
if it had 2 years military?
I've never been away from home until I joined up. Spent 18 months in Vietnam.
My brother was in the Navy Air Force. Flew all over the United States. He was in there better than 4 years. Never did go overseas, right during the thick of it. Every time he'd get ready to go overseas, they'd send him somewhere else, an instructor, and he'd get to come by home on a furlough. I don't know how many times he's home. Heck, I never did get a furlough. I just had one weekend pass before I went home. She's all over with. But I went over, I said, if I ever go into service again, I'm going to change my name to A.B. Abbott. I'm going to be at the top of the list. I don't doubt that deal. They pulled me out of, fill out a replacement, going to start at the bottom of the alphabet. And I never did volunteer. I never did for nothing. When they'd say, come on, Wheeler, I'd go. But when they'd want some volunteers, I sat there until they called me, boy. I learned. Well, I'd always heard say never volunteer for nothing. I didn't. But I said, if I ever go again, I want to be the first of all of it, boy. I'll tell you for sure.
Well, you have any questions?
I've been trying to think the name of that snake that's so poisonous over there.
I don't know what it was, but it was,
Kazoo?
I don't know what the heck it was. We saw it that evening, was in this town, but it had lots of these, I suppose, in formaldehyde snakes in jars. It's kind of a little old laboratory or something. And they told us if you got bit in one of those, you just dead.
Yeah.
That's all there was to it. But when that, something, I don't know whether it's a snake or a lizard, crawl across the old Pee Wee Fuller's chest, it just scared the snot out of him. He said, Wheeler, I'll go on guard with you. He said, I don't want to stay here all night.
Well, those lizards would get in the houses over there. And you go to bed and they would drop from the ceiling. You couldn't see them in daytime. They knew where to hide. But at night they'd come out.
I want to say something
the kids to death in Laverne.
We was going overseas and they just got us down 2 meals a day for 30 days. I was a hungry bird dog when we landed on Guadal Canal. We always liked coconut. Man, they had coconut there. By the bushel, just grew wild, just like Sandy Hill plum. Big old coconut. I ate 5 of those son of a guns. Everybody did. Them son of a guns just breaking those coconuts open just like oranges. And thick meated, oh, that's good. Don't ever try it. That's just like drinking a quart of castor oil, Breeze. Oh my golly, it just like to ruin everybody now. We didn't know it. Boy, oh boy, did
Can
we
you eat
jump.
coconut today?
Very little, very little. I'll tell you for sure, boy. But I'm telling you that that's sure, I like to ruin us.
What was the reaction of the civilians on Okinawa and Guam to you all?
Well,
Did you have any contact with them?
yes, after we got our camp set up, why, they'd come to our garbage dumps. And that gun Marine Corps, they'd shipped in mutton from New Zealand and Australia. That was old sheep that was rotten when they cooked it. You couldn't get in that gum galley. It just stinks so you couldn't stand it. Well, I know it wasn't rotten, or they couldn't have served it to us. But it had a putrid odor, and and they'd put it on your plate. Well, I wouldn't eat to that kind of stuff, boy. I'd just throw it in the trash can. Those natives come along and empty those trash barrels out, and they were little people, not very big, and they'd have some kind of container, and it was just, to me, slop, all it was. And they'd get it, and then I'll never forget one time I saw this one little old lady. She had a pretty good basket, and they carried everything on their heads. Golly, I've seen those little old gals, didn't look like they'd weigh 90 pounds, just trot down the road with a container looked like as big as that thing. They're on their head, just balanced. They just trot along just like a bird dog. I saw this one gal, another one got over, and they just run around with their heads together, trying to both get under that package of slop to take over to their family.
Oh, my.
I felt sorry for them. They couldn't.
Did you go downtown?
Well, there wasn't any towns down there.
Now, were they Japanese, the civilians there? Or
Well, they were Okinawans. Yeah, they looked Japanese. Orientals. I don't know what is Japanese. There wasn't no towns left there, Bernice.
No worries.
Oh, heck no. On Guam, and no, there was no town, just what was left of towns now. Just debris, that's all there was. So I didn't see no town or no nothing at the time.
Well, when John was there, it was after
Yeah.
the wars.
Well,
and
my brother,
that town was built back.
yeah. There wasn't nothing left standing, boy. Well, the Navy had been bombarding, and the Air Force, Guam for 2 or 3 weeks before we landed there, and they thought they had her all pretty well blown up. But this one pillbox was a French 77 gun that just knocked the heck out of us. I'm not kidding nobody. But it was, they were tough.
Ever have any close calls?
Well, the closest one had that tank shot out from under me right there behind us, and we bailed out into the ocean. I don't know whether that's a close call or not, but a tractor shot out from under us, and we had to just bail out in the ocean to pick us up. And then I've had these new tractors we got. The first one just had a Continental motor right in the back, just one motor. Well, these new ones had twin motors, one on each side of the tractor, and it was hydraulic. And the night we took these men up there to this Sugarloaf Hill, well, the artillery began to shoot at us, the 3 tractors. We'd give her this and this like this is in the mud, and boy, they just landed those shell all around us. Well, the strap on one of those hit one of those, and those tractors, they just had about, 3/8-inch armor plating, not much. Well, a 30 caliber bullet just shoot right through them. But there was an artillery shell hit, and the shrapnel come through and cut the hydraulic line. Well, it just left us one motor. We still had power, but not much. We couldn't get over this hill. And this friend Thomas, the one that called me Bogey, he was a good soul. I saw him put a firing pin in a 50 caliber machine gun one night. We were supposed to be able to do it blindfolded. I never could. But he did in the dark when we was pinned down. He had that son of a gun fired again. But this shell hit this tractor and knocked out one motor. He just turned the thing around in reverse. We backed over that hill. Man, I was never so glad to get over hill and head downhill. Boy, I was, because they just getting a little closer to us. They was going to get us if we didn't get over the top of that hill. And we finally got over the top of it. And those things rocking. See, they were made like this, flat bottom, when they'd rock when it rolled like that. Well, it's just like shooting a that gun duck flopping in the water out there with the artillery in. And so we was running a zigzag course trying to stay away from them, boy. I don't know if that's close or not, but
Close enough,
yeah, close enough anyway.
Well, I guess we have a good interview.
That's a good one.
Well, I've told my wife a few of these things, but I can understand what you're doing here, and I think it's a good thing. But I want my brother to get a hold of you.
Okay.
I'd like for you to pay him.
Yeah. If you have my card there
Yeah, I've
when
got
it comes in.
I'll see him. Well, Bernice, their daughter, they have 2 girls. Jane is getting married in June. Well, he said he and Barbara would be back. And see, this brother of mine, he's been with an oil company. Well, he was with President Eisenhower, staff assistant to him. And then he said he finally got with the Sun Oil Company, moved to Tulsa, moved back to Washington. He's been a lobbyist for them. He retired and with a big law firm up there now. And he's going to stay this session of Congress, and he's coming back to the ranch. But Jane's getting married in June, so see, he said, Barbara and I'll be back in April, and that's just a week to go back. And he's back about every other weekend, something like that. But I'd like him to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because you'd enjoy him. Where'd you go to school?
Went 2 years at OSU, 2 years at Oklahoma, 2 years University of Texas.
Well, he's a graduate of OSU. Joel, my pleasure.
Sir, thank you.
Yeah. Bernice?